Incidents become familiar over the last 6 weeks. A city centre being cleared of traffic and prepared for some of the finest cyclists in Europe contesting the Kelloggs Cycling Championship. Good evening. Tonight we're in Glasgow for the final round of the 1984 Championship, and what a climax we're set for, with just 1 point separating the top two riders. At the moment it's Malcolm Elliott of Great Britain wearing the yellow jersey of the championship leader, but I'm sure Malcolm, more than anyone else, would agree that nothing is safe, nothing is certain in this kind of racing. And just to emphasize that point, let's take a look at how the race for the championship has fluctuated over the season so far. 6 weeks ago, the series got underway in front of a big crowd in Manchester. International stars, including Sean Kelly, making a guest appearance, and defending champion Phil Thomas. And in the crowd, Eddy Merckx, the great Belgian Tour de France star. The action followed the thrilling standard set by the Kellogg series in 1983. And the man victorious in the very aggressive sprint finish was Sean Kelly. But with Kelly making a one-off guest appearance, it was the second man, Malcolm Elliott, who took the yellow jersey. In Nottingham the following week, Elliott successfully defended that yellow jersey from a strong challenge by Phil Thomas. The Elliott-Thomas rivalry was already keen, but that was going to cost them very dear the following week in Bristol. Here, Thomas and Elliott were watching each other so closely that they lost touch with a sensational breakaway by Sean Yates and Stephen Roche. Yates and Roche lapped the yellow jersey wearer and the defending champion, eliminating them both from the race. Yates won the sprint for the line, and while the two riders shared the celebrations, Elliott kept the yellow jersey, but his lead was now very slim. The toughest race in the series was the following week on the rain-soaked cobbles of Cardiff Castle. There were many crashes, including one involving Elliott, which put him out of the points, and this one for the race leader, Neil Stevens. Stevens bravely got up and finished second to his Australian compatriot Danny Clark. Behind them, Phil Thomas finished in the points to take the yellow jersey back from Elliott. And then more sensations in last week's final round. This time a breakaway from Alan Piper, Stephen Roche and Shane Sutton lapped the entire field. It was a race of crashes and confusion. Sutton involved in this one, but he took advantage of a lap out to contest the final sprint with the eventual winner, Alan Piper. As for the championship leaders, Thomas crashed. Elliott scored points despite being lapped, so it's Elliott in the yellow jersey for the final round in Glasgow. Story so far, you're leading by 1 point, but it has been a tough series for you, hasn't it?
Yes, 6 weeks is a long time to be under pressure for, and I'll be glad when tonight's race is over with.
That 1 point lead, but what sort of pressure do you feel on you tonight?
Well, I've got to just try and treat it like any other race and win it. You know, it's the best way of securing the championship.
Big grin from the man alongside you here, Phil Thomas, the man who's applying the pressure tonight. Phil, what are going to be your tactics tonight?
I think we'll just have to see how the pattern of the race goes. But I think it's a very, very fast circuit, and we just don't know really till we get going. Some of the circuits this year have been so different to last year. You just don't know how the pattern of racing is going to be until you're into the first maybe 5 or 6 laps, and you know you can decide tactics from there.
All going to come down to that final bend, do you think?
I hope so. I hope I've got the yellow jersey on me back at the end of the race.
Okay, so it's Malcolm Elliott leading Phil Thomas by just 1 point, but let's not forget riders like Steve Joughin here, and also Jack Kershaw. They're just 2 points off the lead and riding contention. But if we take a look at the overall championship standings, we can see that another man riding contention, Australia's Alan Piper. But sadly, Alan is not with us tonight. He's not on the start line. He crashed very heavily in northern France yesterday. He's been discharged from hospital, but he's got bad injuries to his hip, his arm, his leg, and the word is he might be out of racing for quite some time. He has got the consolation of being confirmed as our King of the Sprints champion, and I'm sure everyone here tonight will wish Alan a very speedy recovery. So, one big name is gone, but another big name is with us, and Robert Millar, the hero of the Tour de France, is with us here in Glasgow. Robert, a magnificent 4th last year, including a great win in the mountains.
Now the plaques which say just yards to go to the line. Millar can prepare himself now for the salute. The two arms are all we want to see now, and there they are. Millar's won the stage in the Tour de France. The tears exhibited become smiles and tears of joy.
Tears of joy. You still get a big smile on your face when you look at that.
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever seen it. I've
Really?
not had the chance to see it before. It's good to see it.
Winning, of course, in the mountains for the second time, king of the mountains. What makes you such a great mountain specialist?
I can't really say. It's probably because I'm small. I don't weigh very much. It's a thing, power to weight ratio, I think. Yeah, it's not. I can't really tell. It's something I think I'm born with. It's just a natural ability.
Coming back to Scotland, what sort of reception did you get here tonight? Because it's a while since you've raced here, isn't it?
I haven't raced in Scotland since 1978, I think. It's really good to be in my hometown to race. It's always a big occasion for a rider to ride in his hometown, and it's something special tonight.
Robert Millar, great pleasure to see you here tonight. Have a good race.
Thank you.
So that's the scene set for this final round of the 1984 Kelloggs Cycling Championship. Let's join our commentary team of Mick Bennett and Phil Liggett and get their views on how the championship might be decided.
Well, we couldn't wish for a better climax, Steve, and if I were to pick a winner tonight, I'd be a very brave man, but I think perhaps I'll go for Malcolm Elliott. What about you, Mick Bennett?
Well, I feel it's going to be the man with the strongest team, and if it's the strongest team, it's got to be Falcon, it's got to be Phil Thomas.
Well, they have been the two riders who have fought out this championship now for the last 5 weeks, and a great deal of sadness for everybody here tonight in the absence of Alan Piper of Australia, because Piper was most certainly in with a chance too of winning this championship in this final event. So after 6 weeks, all the action and all the titles, all the money is on this final race of the series, and the overall leader of the night of the series, Malcolm Elliott in yellow, goes out in front to start with.
I feel on a circuit like this, Phil, we tend to have very wide straights as they swing round George Square. We've got almost 1 kilometre of circuit each time they complete a lap, and the very nature of this course, as they're on the back straight now, is going to be big, wide open attacks, far side, far right of the road. As already Phil Thomas is putting an attack there, he's not going to sit back and watch Malcolm Elliott wear this yellow jersey right to the end. So it's virtually a rectangle, this course. We swing out of George Street into Montrose Street now, which will then bring them down this 200-yard, very wide, very long and very fast Cochrane Street to finish in George Square.
Well, as expected, the pressure is on approximately 600 yards around the circuit, about a kilometre, and the lap speeds are already high. We're expecting speeds tonight of around 28 miles an hour because this circuit, almost a complete rectangle, has 2 long straights and 2 short sides to it. And not surprisingly, it's going to be extremely quick. The riders being stretched all the time. Phil Baton doing the damage here at the fronting green. And I should imagine that Malcolm Elliott and Phil Thomas delighted that Alan Piper is not here to intrude now on what has been a personal battle for them for the last 6 weeks. The overall situation before this race started this evening, Malcolm Elliott in the yellow jersey with 25 points, Phil Thomas only 1 point behind with 24, and Jack Kershaw now in 3rd spot in the absence of Alan Piper. Also, he has 22 points. Well, Jack Kershaw, I think, has been one of the surprises in this series, and already Steve Wakefield comes right round that corner far too quickly and through the cones. Yeah, I was saying, Mick, about Jack Kershaw. He's been very consistent, hasn't he?
Yes, he has, you see, because he's sat in the bunch. He's let the big guns get on with the racing. He's sat there and he's picked the fruit at the end of each event. He's been placed in every event to date, and very, very wise to do so. He hasn't got a strong team behind him like Raleigh and the Falcon team. So the Whiteman Fibrax team isn't quite as strong as the other two, but he's sat back there, and results have shown, and his performances have shown that he can get up there in any sprint, because we had a wet sprint at Cardiff and a hilly course at Birmingham last week. So Jack's ready for anything. I could well see him finish up there in the first 3 tonight.
So Steve Wakefield takes the race through, followed by Terry Tinsley. Jack Kershaw, I think, is up there now in 2nd place. So Kershaw, very serious intent tonight. So one of the most consistent riders, Jack Kershaw, throughout this series, really. He has played a major part in the competition, and he's only a member of a small team, and this Glasgow circuit might well reduce his chances.
I think with the longer straights tonight, I think it'll affect it quite considerably. You'll have more chance on the wide straights to move up. On the trickier, shorter circuits, it's more or less every man for himself. And so I think I'll be at a bit of a disadvantage tonight.
So lack of team support could be crucial.
Jack
I think so,
Kershaw,
yes.
perhaps not fancying his chances quite as much as we would expect, but certainly staying near the action at the moment. This is Shane Sutton on the front of Australia. Kershaw in second place. And no sign at all yet of Malcolm Elliott, and I would expect him to be out near the front. Well, there he is now, Elliott in sixth place. Phil Thomas, I would suspect, not too far away, but not right on the wheel of Malcolm Elliott as he has been for the last few weeks now.
No, but when you're wearing a yellow jersey as bright as Malcolm Elliott's, you certainly can pick it out very quickly in the bench, because there's nobody else other than Bob Downs riding a jersey of a similar colour. So I wouldn't think Phil's a very crafty rider, very clever rider. He's not going to be too far away from Malcolm. Interesting to see. It'll take a few laps for the whole pace and the speed of the event to settle down to a consistent speed. And I think we're going to see one of the fastest events.
Banbury producing the speed at the moment. The new British 5,000 metres individual pursuit champion, won his title during the series when he was during the British Track Championships in Leicester. And Tony Doyle in fourth place now in the orange jersey. Phil Bacon in fifth. Doyle too is having a very good series. Not quite as good as the one he had last year, but certainly always up among the challengers. So Phil Thomas comes to the front. Kershaw in second place. Danny Clark not too far away. And Phil Thomas now being seen at the front here, reminding everybody he is the defending champion. He has a chance now of stealing the yellow jersey in this final race of the series from Malcolm Elliott. Tony Doyle comes to the front now, and the pace is already very, very high indeed. Baton in second place. Danny Clark, the winner in those atrocious conditions at Cardiff. In the Halfords white jersey there in third place.
He's a man on form, is Danny Clark. Tremendous form at the moment. Rode in Belgium yesterday. Said to me he smashed the field to smithereens. So let's hope he's recovered and he can smash the field to smithereens here tonight in Glasgow. But he's the guy, the Australian guy riding for Halfords with a white stripe down his helmet in third spot now.
Well, taxis, of course, will obviously feature a great deal in tonight's race, especially towards the climax. And if the riders are still together, the individuals like Steve Joughin will have a good chance to win.
Well, if it's nice and bunched up, well, there's going to be fighting for that last corner. There's going to be a lot of shoulder barging going on, selecting the right gear to come out of that corner in. It's going to be a very high gear. It's slightly downhill, so it's going to be very fast. It's going to be 45 mile an hour plus down here tonight for this finishing straight.
There's going to be a bit of aggression flying, you think?
An awful lot of aggression flying tonight. There's a lot of money at stake, and there's a lot of pride at stake, and it's going to be very hard.
So Bob Downs on the front now. A lone professional from Percy Bilton, and that's the difficulty facing these riders of individual sponsorship. Nobody at all in the field here to help them, and that makes for a very difficult race indeed. Bob Downs, Commonwealth Games gold medalist before he turned professional, and now stringing the field through. When they come through this time, there will be one lap to go to the sprint for the King of the Sprints competition. And just to remind you all about this competition, which is run within the series, and Alan Piper is the overall leader with 40 points, and that is a winning lead, because the first four riders at the end of this lap coming up will receive 5, 3, 2 and 1 points. But with only 3 sprints tonight, as with every week, then 15 points is the maximum anybody can gain tonight, and Alan Piper's overall lead in this competition is 17 points ahead of Steve Fleetwood of the ever-ready Marlborough team. So the pace being set by Bob Downs. Danny Clark in second place. Steve Fleetwood on the far right there. Where's number 8? On the left of the picture in the red jersey as we look now. Fleetwood tries now to come to the front. He needs all the points he can get. He's being challenged in this competition for second place at least by Stephen Roche of Ireland.
Second is the King of the Sprint, that's Steve Fleetwood of
So the minor placing still to be decided tonight. And as these pictures can be seen in Belgium, I would suspect that Alan Piper is watching on from his bed tonight and regretting every minute of the fact that he can't be here with us. So the sprint now for 5, 3, 2 and 1. It looks to me as though this is going to be a win for Terry Tinsley if he keeps going. Tinsley hits the line first, just pips Steve Fleetwood on the line there. Phil Baton, I think, took second place, but a very good sprint there from the British sprint champion. Terry Tinsley won his title 2 weeks ago at Leicester. There he is on the front still. So Tinsley goes away. Steve Fleetwood takes 3 valuable points there in second place. So Danny Clark now setting on the action, having seen Terry Tinsley take the sprint. Clark livens the pace up again. Sid Barras now in second place, and Phil Baton taking a deep breath there after the sprint and hanging on in third spot.
Well, the first sprint, but it's still cat and mouse in this battle for the 1984 championship. We'll be back in the centre of Glasgow in just a couple of minutes' time. Welcome back to Glasgow, the final round of the Kelloggs Cycling Championship. First sprint of the evening we've just had. Let's check on that result. And it's a win for Terry Tinsley. He takes the 5 points. Second, Steve Fleetwood. Third, Phil Baton. And fourth, Steve Jones. That sprint, of course, in the absence of the man who's already taken the King of the Sprints title, that's the Australian Alan Piper. But as you heard earlier, sadly, Alan has had a bad crash in northern France, can't be with us tonight, and he hasn't got that chance to close the gap on Malcolm Elliott. But we have got Alan here on the line from his home in Belgium. And Alan, first of all, can you tell us exactly what happened in that crash yesterday and how you're feeling now?
Well, it was a bit the same as one of the sprints in the Kelloggs. Coming to the final dash, everyone was making their moves, and unfortunately I clipped the wheel and landed about 70 kilometres an hour on the ground. And I've got stitches in my arm, and I've got a torn muscle in my thigh, and a lot of bruising around the back area.
Bad news, of course, for the big crowd here in Glasgow. How long do you think you might be out?
Well, the doctor said about 2 weeks it'll take to get back on my bike, but I hope it's going to be only 2 days, but I don't think so, actually.
Early stages in the race here in Glasgow, still cat and mouse. Have you got any thoughts from the distance you're at about how it might turn out?
Maybe they should just watch out for Steve Joughin, because he's only a little way behind as well, isn't he?
Indeed. And what are your feelings about missing this final round? You must be pretty choked, I should think.
Well, I was very upset last night because, well, I think I could have won it anyway, and to come so far and not be able to have a go at winning is just not the game, is it?
Indeed. Alan, thanks for your contribution to the series so far. Look forward to seeing you again next year. Okay, so there's Alan Piper all the way on the phone from Belgium talking to the pits here in Glasgow. Let's get back to tonight's final round.
And while we listen there to the voice of Alan Piper, the attacks go on in this series. This one coming from Ian Fagan and Nigel Dean, and they've stolen the first march on the bunch tonight. The gaps are beginning to open.
Yeah, and Ian Fagan, just the right sort of rider to do this. Again, one of the lone sponsored riders, got no team help up there, but he's the sort of rider that's very strong, likes long straights, doesn't possess a particularly fast sprint or a particularly fast jump, but he likes these long, drawn-out attacks. And he's the sort of rider, Nigel Dean, neither of them are any problem to Malcolm Elliott, Steve Joughin, or Phil Thomas on the overall pacing. So this break could just well stay away for a few laps.
Nigel Dean does his turn at the front with 25 laps still to go, and Danny Clark has moved up there into second place, but the continual shadowing of the two leaders of this series, in yellow Malcolm Elliott, always being followed now by Phil Thomas. These the two front runners, Fagan doing all the work, a little bit more work I think than perhaps Nigel Dean, because Dean has some interest in stopping this breakaway succeeding, because of course Steve Joughin, the British road racing champion, is a teammate of Nigel Dean. He's back in the field. A good finish by Joughin tonight could snatch this title in this very last event here in the city of Glasgow.
Well, I think the average speeds here are well over 30 mile an hour, probably 31, 32 mile an hour already, even early on in the event. And it looks as if Stephen Roche is nullifying that attack by Ian Fagan there. And Nigel Dean just decided to come through to the front. as you said, Phil, is very obviously up there to protect Steve Joughin's interests.
Well, Robert Millar, of course, fourth in the Tour de France. This event a little unusual for him, but still, I think a course that might or might not suit him.
It's like putting a long-distance runner in the sprint. It's not my scene at all.
What would it take for you to win a race like this then?
A miracle, quite frankly. If I was quite well placed in the last bend and everybody fell off before me, I could win, but other than that, I don't think there's much chance of it.
Is there any way you can prepare for a race like this?
Yeah, you need a lot of speed work beforehand, do a lot of short, sharp training rides, but unfortunately during the season we don't have the time to prepare especially for certain races.
Well, for the last couple of years now, you've had those great rides in the Tour. What would it take?
To be 3 times stronger than I am at present. I don't really believe in my own chances of winning the Tour. I'm quite happy to be king of the mountains every year if I can.
So the attack's still being launched here now with Dean and Fagan caught. It's Stephen Roche of Dublin going clear. A lot of Irish spectators here this evening. They've come over to Scotland to see Stephen Roche do well again. He's been a star of this series, that's for sure. He was with Sean Yates when, of course, they lapped the field of Bristol, and taking out of the race there Phil Thomas and Malcolm Elliott, the 2 riders tonight who are at the top of the overall standings. Roche on the front, shadowed by a teammate of Malcolm Elliott, Steve Jones. Jones goes into the lead. I think possibly here, Mick, that Jones is trying to slow down this attack of Roche.
Yes, that's just what he's trying to do. Not only slow it down, but perhaps when Stephen swings off the front, but keep the tempo that little bit higher to stop any other attacks from breaking away. But not only is it a lot of pressure on the likes of Malcolm Elliott in the yellow jersey, Phil Thomas second place and Steve Joughin, there's also been a lot of pressure on the actual team riders that belong to the various teams of these riders, and it's their jobs to get those riders to the finish line and hopefully get them to the finish line in a bunch sprint, because they've got electrifying finishes. There aren't many people that can beat them in these style of races, and so it's up to the team riders that ride to support these lads to make sure that the race stays together.
Well, another rider who rides alone in these circuit races is Tony Doyle, and Doyle now trying to rid himself of the field. Nobody doubts the speed of Tony Doyle, a silver medalist in the World Championships in Barcelona, over 5,000 metres, and this, of course, the circuit of just 1,000 metres, making up 1 lap. Doyle goes clear, terrific turn of speed, and somewhat panic in the field now. Phil Baton reacts immediately, a lap speed being recorded last time now of 32.33 miles an hour. That is a tremendous lap speed. I don't believe a car could go around this circuit in the centre of Glasgow and average the same speed. Doyle takes the race out, and it's Baton first across to him. Jack Kershaw, I think it is, up in 3rd place too. Kershaw riding a very, very good series indeed, and trying now to fight for a place in the top 3 tonight.
What's making the course very fast also is the fact that the corners are very wide. They're very wide. There's a nasty switch there from Sean Yates as he tried to put Jack Kershaw off that sprint. But as I was saying, the course is very wide. The corners are also very wide. And if you notice that the majority of the riders are actually pedalling around the corners, unlike some of the other circuits that we've had in the Kelloggs series, they're actually pedalling around the corners, as Sean Yates has just done there around George Square, which enables the actual tempo to stay at a very regular level throughout the whole of the lap.
So Sean Yates from Forest Row spends most of his summers racing for the Peugeot team in France, comes off the front of the race £100 richer now, because the sprint we've just seen was a special lap prize of £100, and that is why Sean Yates gave it all he could. But this is Tony Doyle again now, and Yates and Doyle were in the same team pursuit squad in the Olympic Games in Moscow in 1980. Now they ride here as rivals in sponsored teams. Doyle on the front, Sid Barris in 2nd place, Roche following Barris's wheel, and the bunch all over the circuit here.
Right, anybody off in this race, the positions at the top, several positions are so close that anything could happen, as we've seen on the last 2 races. There's been crashes, people falling off, including myself. and the positions have been reversed so dramatically that anything can happen, and you can't write anybody off. Though I see Phil Thomas as my major threat.
So the voice there of Malcolm Elliott predicting, and on the front now, a teammate of Phil Thomas, Sid Barris, and the attack's coming on the far side of the road now. Dudley Hayton tries to. This race full of fight tonight, nobody giving an inch. And the rider in the thick of it, Malcolm Elliott, in the yellow jersey of overall leadership, just 1 point ahead of Phil Thomas from the Falcon team. Dudley Hayton goes into the corner, holds it tight, looks over his shoulder to see what sort of damage he's doing behind, and it's again Phil Baton. What can you say about Phil Baton, Nick? He's always in the action.
Well, he's certainly earned the nickname of the engine, because if ever there's an attack on and he wants to be in it, and it seems almost inevitable that he does want to be in every attack, and he's determined to get there. This man just loves racing, and so does Dudley Hayton. He's had a very quiet Kelloggs series up to date, but he's had to make amends for that tonight. As we can see, he's there on the front, very strong, known as the cuddly teddy bear is Dudley Hayton, because of his stature, the size of him. But he's a tremendous athlete, had a sinus infection for the majority of the last 2 months, but he tells me just before the start today that he's on the way to recovery, and he's out to make amends tonight.
Well, his speed around this circuit, that was a lap of 31.33 miles an hour, but the engine's at it again. Baton storms off the front of this bunch, and the crowd are well behind him now. Rides seemingly relaxed on the top of the bars, changing his position now, goes down low, gives it everything he can find, and his chin sticks out. But Danny Clark is up smoothly and calmly. Clark, of course, the man who won over those wet cobbles in Cardiff, and you can see the clock counting down now. 70 seconds around this circuit means 31.88 miles an hour. Baton still on the front, looking over a little bit for help. Clark gives it to him. Danny Clark swings through, trailed now by Dudley Hayton, still up there. The yellow jersey of Malcolm Elliott still being preoccupied by the whereabouts of Phil Thomas in the centre of the pack. Over the finishing line they go, and that looks like a speed of 31 miles an hour, and mostly down to the speed of Phil Baton that lap.
And the attacks are really nullifying any moves that are likely to stay away for more than a lap or two, because the adrenaline, and you can feel it here in the commentary box, is so high that it's generated throughout the whole of the riders in the race tonight. And riders like Danny Clark revel in this sort of atmosphere. Noted as an indoor 6-day rider, most of his program starts around about the end of October and goes through to March, but he's come here to the UK to take part in 6 of the Kellogg's events, and he's determined to show people that the speed he's got on the indoor tracks he's also got on the road.
Well, you don't find a much harder man in professional cycling than Danny Clark. Out early this year with a broken hip. He still says he feels the pain in his leg when he stamps on the pedals, but it doesn't make any difference at all to him. He goes for it and he tries, and he's also winning well this summer. Clark watching every move, but once more it's the faithful teammate of Malcolm Elliott, Steve Jones, who comes to the front, trailed by Steve Joughin now, and Joughin said before the start tonight he wanted to try and snatch this race at the last minute. Well, he's always in the action. 2 laps to go now to the second of the King of the Sprints tonight.
And with Steve Jones up there, he must be the ideal man to have alongside you in a situation like this, when it all hinges on the last sprint, because he knows the professional game inside out, knows the job to do. He's almost got a sixth sense with Malcolm Elliott. He reads his mind. He did just the same sort of thing for Malcolm Elliott in the National Circuit Race Championships in Birmingham earlier this year. Led the whole race for the last 4 or 5 laps to keep the pace high, to stop people from sprinting away from Malcolm. And Malcolm came through at the end and took the title. And that's just what he's trying to do tonight. It'll be interesting to see the last few laps whether he does just that same thing.
The face on Steve Jones there, you can see it here, is one of concentration, and of course a little bit of kidology from the top riders. They try to appear as though they aren't feeling the effort of the pace at all. They actually try to keep the face straight, and Jones is a master of the art at this. He now swings smoothly over as Danny Clark brings through the train of riders. Steve Fleetwood tries to get on his wheel, because in the overall situations in the King of the Sprint, as we hear the hooter for 1 lap to go, is that Danny Clark is challenging in 3rd or 4th place overall. But it's Alan Pryford, of course, who's won this title with 40 points. Sadly, he's not here to receive the final accolades tonight. Instead, He's at home in Belgium, nursing the injuries caused yesterday in a race. But on the other hand, Steve Fleetwood knows now this is a good chance for him to try and climb safely into second place overall.
Glenn Mitchell there attacking, checks behind him, sees that Steve Fleetwood isn't with him, but Steve Joughin, who's also a danger in this king of the sprints. And I wouldn't mind having as a guess that Glenn Mitchell will ease off, see that Steve Fleetwood isn't with him, can't take a dangerous man that is a danger to Steve Fleetwood, and he'll swing over. That's my guess at this particular time.
Let's see how it works out. Mitchell looks over his shoulder. Joughin comes through. Phil Baton comes through in the green jersey there. Stephen Roche on the far right of the picture, and he claims he isn't a sprinter, but he's finding a useful turn of speed here. 5 very good points if Roche can take this. Enormous cheer from the crowd. Stephen Roche gets it. And in second place was Steve Jones. I think it was Neil Stevens there in third slot. But those 5 points for Stephen Roche move him now into equal second place overall in the King of the Sprints with 26 points alongside Steve Fleetwood. Roche on the front. Steve Jones doing a marvellous blocking job here, thinking only of Malcolm Elliott, his rally teammate. Not willing at all to work with Steve Roche. He knows the speed of this rider from Dublin. And so once again, on the front of the race, Steve Jones takes control.
Also takes a lot of mind over matter really when you come into an event, but these are all professional riders, and it takes an awful lot to throw a race away for one of your team leaders in particular situations like this, and you also almost ask for complete loyalty in that type of event.
So Jones on the front, seemingly now in control. Roche in second place. Malcolm Elliott and Phil Thomas still marking each other man for man, and this race wide open at the moment.
In the pits with 2 very nervous team managers here, George Shaw of Raleigh, Bernard Taylor of Falcon. Bernard, you got Phil Thomas out there. What are going to be his tactics in the closing stages, do you think?
Well, it's that tight tonight. It all depends on the who goes over the line first between Phil and Malcolm. But we had a word with the judges, and they said that it's all on a countdown system. So if Phil happens to beat Malcolm in the gallop, it means they're all equal points, and they've included in the rules that the winner of the night wins it overall. So it's.
George, that doesn't help your peace of mind, does it, for Malcolm?
Well, no, but I'm always confident in Malcolm. Obviously, the speed's keeping very high at the moment, and having a big bunch sprint at the end. I think Malcolm and Phil are watching each other very, very closely, and I think the last few laps will obviously decide. I mean, having a sprint like Malcolm's got, he's had the edge on Phil up to now this year, in the majority, so I'm just confident that will be the case.
But for both of you at the moment, all going to plan?
Oh, yes, I think so, yeah, quite happy.
OK, we'll take a break. We'll be back with the climax with that dramatic sprint, which is going to decide this Kellogg's Championship right after this break.
The Tefal Long Life Steam Iron. More holes means more steam, and more steam means less work. Tefal, we have the technology because we have the brains.
A little off the beaten track for a wine writer, perhaps. But to master blend coffee, these plantations are as precious as a great Bordeaux estate. Only some of the finest high-grown beans are used, almost a whole tree for just £1. Every bean must pass 5 separate selection stages. The result? Rounded, full-bodied, and smooth.
New Master Blend from Maxwell House, the finest ground coffee you can make.
New Astratherm. It's the most efficient window system ever devised. Dial 100 for the facts. Ask for free phone Caledonian Astraseal now.
In the evening news, there's £1,000 cash to be won every day. News cards are being delivered soon. If you can match 7 numbers in the evening news, you've won £1,000. And every winner is local.
Forging ahead in quality. Forging ahead in taste. Forging ahead in value. Forge Lager. Good to have at home.
Attention all traders, get your share of Castle's success in the £500,000 giveaway. Big bargains in wine, spirits and beers, grocery, confectionery and catering. If you're not already a customer of Castle, hurry and get your book of vouchers worth £500. You always save at Castle, 525 Crown Street, Glasgow and Bothwell Road, Hamilton.
Park Grove House Leisure Centre. Jacuzzi, steam room, sauna, gym, massage, sunbeds and solarium. Park Grove House, Glasgow's unisex leisure centre.
To test these leading products, we took a typical two-child family and cut it in half. We gave each half the 5 packet tops. One half we took into Bank of Scotland and the other half into another leading bank. The half we put into Bank of Scotland got £1 per packet top for every pound of their own when they opened a Super Savers account for their child. As for the other half, well, not really very good results there. So get the packs now, folks. They're worth up to £5 at Bank of Scotland.
Back at Glasgow, we're approaching the deciding moments of the Kelloggs Championship. The excitement is really building, but let's bring you up to date with the full result of that last sprint. There you see victory for Stephen Roche of Ireland, 5 points for him. Steve Jones followed him in, 3 for Steve Jones. Neil Stevens of Australia gets 2, and Phil Baton of England gets 1 point. Now the cumulative after 2 sprints. There you see Terry Tinsley, who won the first sprint of the evening, together with Stephen Roche on 5 points, Steve Jones on 4, Steve Fleetwood and Phil Baton on 3, and Neil Stevens on 2.
So as the field go away in the distance, it's Steve Fleetwood on the attack at the front of the field. Just a few yards gap opening here. But this race, surprisingly, Mick, at the moment, is staying together despite all the speed tonight.
Yeah, I think and that's partly due to the teamwork by the likes of Steve Jones. Sid Barris has been well up there. I noticed Keith Lambert's moving up to the front as well. And little Jack Kershaw, who's hidden away there, the guy with the white helmet, just come round the corner now in about 7th or 8th spot. He's very cautious, and obviously, as the gaps develop, as Dudley Hayton's just attacked there and put one in, as I speak, Keith Lambert moves to the front, keeps the tempo very high, and when you're doing 31 mile an hour, to get away and stay away, it means you've got to maintain 35 mile an hour plus, or even more. And the case of doing that tonight, I would think, is almost an impossibility. And so we're getting this almost yo-yoing effect. We're getting riders breaking away, going into oxygen debt after about a lap, and having to come back, and then they'll go right to the back of the race until it takes them 4 or 5 laps to recover again, and they'll move slowly up the field again and possibly have another attack. Tony Doyle's a classic sort of rider like this.
There's the face of Keith Lambert, twice a British road racing champion. They call him Legs Lambert because of his huge legs, and he's now setting a tempo, it seems, for the moment at least, that nobody can match. He's stringing them out. Keith Lambert here doing a teamwork second to none for Phil Thomas, because he knows if Thomas can be brought around this circuit to the finish tonight safely in this pack, then this championship will be decided between Thomas and Elliott. Elliott, first year professional, and just about a year ago he was winning 2 gold medals in the Commonwealth Games in Brisbane. So Lambert done his bit now, swings over, looks for some assistance, finds it coming here from Dudley Hayton, and then an attack by Tony Doyle, and on the far side Sean Yates. So Doyle and Yates, amateur international riders of 4 years ago, now deadly rivals as professionals. Yates makes the corner first, Doyle in second place. They're out of the hunt overall tonight, but they still want a share in the prizes. And let me just remind you once again about the point scoring system. The winner tonight will receive 10 points, 9 points for second, 8 for third, and so on, down to 1 point for 10th place. And the overall situation, the leaders separated by just a single point, Elliott and Thomas. And this is Tony Doyle now, stringing out the field once again. He rides in this very strange crouch position, pulled very forward in the saddle, isn't he?
Yeah, that's typical of a pursuiter's type of style. He's tended to relax his upper body a lot more during his the later months of this year in preparation for the Pursuit Championships in Barcelona. And it paid off because, of course, when you're in this sort of situation, when you start to tense up in the arm, generally transmitted down through the legs, you tense up in the legs, and so the bike, sorry, not the bike, but your body doesn't seem as fluid and doesn't operate as fluid as what it would do if it's relaxed. And young Neil Stevens there attacking, and we've got Robert Millar there in the polkadot jersey, has moved up onto his wheel. So maybe we're going to see Robert come through to the front for at least a lap or two.
Well, the crowd are responding now to the polkadot jersey of Robert Millar, the jersey that Millar wore so proudly through the Alps in the Tour de France in the July heat, and now he's brought it to Glasgow and showing it at the front for the first time. Neil Stephens of Australia in the lead, Millar in second place. And the crowd loving every minute of this, an enormous crowd once again here in Glasgow, cheering a Scot around the city centre. Stephens in first place, Millar in second place, and Millar goes into the attack. This is what they were waiting for. Millar goes into the attack. Baton tries to answer in second place. Roche is in third place.
And almost certainly there, Robert Millar gave Phil Baton in second place a little flick of his back wheel. That's a classic move, to flick your back wheel as you launch yourself out the bunch, because it makes you, the rider behind you, break momentarily, puts you off your stride and slows the actual bunch down behind you and gives you that little bit of a launch, a little bit of a kick to get away from them.
Well, Millar's got the kick, he's got the launch now, and he's going for home. Millar puts his head down, buries himself, as they say. He's never gone down George Square in Glasgow as fast as this before. He comes round the corner, breaks tight. The crowd cheer him all the way round because they are seeing probably the greatest cyclist Britain has ever produced. Fourth in the Tour de France, the king of the mountains in that great race. Sixth in the World Championship just a couple of weeks ago. As an amateur, twice the British champion. When he turned professional, he almost stole the title from Bernard Hinault in Solange in 1980, and he faded in the last 5 miles. Millar is the man of the moment now as he goes around the city centre in Glasgow. But they're coming back because professionals have said, that was your moment of glory, Robert. We've been here for 6 weeks and we're going to share out the money. Steve Jones comes over the top. Keith Lambert in second place. Jack Kershaw in third place. Then the yellow jersey of Elliott, followed by Phil Thomas. Who else? The whole field now coming towards the climax of what has been a marvellous series. And Thomas and Elliott are now trying to battle their way to the front. Jones on the front, this cool man from Birmingham, trying to control this race, keep a moment of sense in it, try and keep Malcolm Elliott in contact. But the Falcon team of Phil Thomas lie and wait behind him, and they too have great thoughts of Phil Thomas snatching victory tonight, as he did a year ago in the city centre in Birmingham, where Phil Anderson lapped the field. Well, what a tremendous speed they are now, lapping at just a little under 32 miles an hour. And Steve Jones is on the front. Keith Lambert is in second place. Steve Joughin there in third place. Well, last year's city cycling campaign, Phil Thomas knew it well, and he knows all about the pressures and the difficulties in the final stages of a series such as this. And he knows just how helpful teams can be.
I think it'll just be a tough race all the way. I mean, last year's race, the final of the Kelloggs at Birmingham, was a very, very hard race. You know, Phil Anderson jumped around the zone, and my team had to completely control the race and down to the finish. I mean, we just don't know. There's so many people in contention of an overall win tonight. We just don't know what can happen. You know, I think that there's maybe 4 or 5 people that could take it away tonight. And I think the rally team have a real job of them tonight, keeping hold of this position.
This kind of racing can get very rough, can get a bit tough. What sort of things go on?
Oh, well, obviously, towards the last lap or so, in most criterium races, you've got to keep yourself in the best position you can for the sprint, and everyone's pushing, shoving, and it's just the man with the most bottle on the night, I think, a lot of the times, takes the win.
You're not sure of that?
I'm not sure of that, no.
And the frank voice of Phil Thomas there, but still this man, Steve Jones, is on the front. Baton in second place. There is Jones, looks over, checks who's coming by. This time it's Glenn Mitchell moving up on the outside of Steve Jones, because this is the sprint lap for the third and final King of the Sprints tonight. A title that Alan Piper has won and sadly can't be here, but the fight is on for second place between Steve Fleetwood and Stephen Roche, because they are equal in second place with 26 points. And now we have Baton coming through on the outside. Fleetwood trying to get by in second place in the red. So if Fleetwood snatches this, he also takes the victory on the line. He's coming clear now, so Steve Fleetwood, 5 points. If Baton doesn't challenge him, 5 points to Fleetwood. That will do nicely, because that means that Steve Fleetwood will finish second in the King of the Sprints competition behind Alan Piper. And Joughin goes through there, still nicely placed, but we can have a look now at the result of that sprint. Steve Fleetwood wins with 5 points, Phil Baton takes 3, Steve Jones always there with 2, and Malcolm Elliott coming in with 1 point. In the situation tonight, Fleetwood has scored well in Piper's absence, 8 points. Phil Baton takes 6 along with Steve Jones, and Terry Tinsley, the British sprint champion, gets 5 along with Stephen Roche. But now at the front, Danny Clark, spending the season in England this year. He's come to form in these last 3 weeks. We saw the sort of speed he had at Cardiff, and now he's in the action again.
And what action we've got, because it's likely to be a very rough, tough and tumble finish here, because you notice as the rider's flicking out, Malcolm Elliott glancing left and right over his shoulder. There's only one guy he's looking for, and that's Phil Thomas. And you can guarantee that Phil Thomas will be trying to hide himself. No, he's tucked there, just trying to squeeze himself up to Malcolm Elliott's wheel there. Malcolm Elliott knows he's there. He's trying to think now, what's going through your mind at this point is, I've got to get up there. The adrenaline's flowing. It tends to cloud a lot of the decisions you do make. But Malcolm Elliott's got a rider's flick straight into the cone lane there. The tension is obviously very great in that bunch at the moment, Phil. And I'd hate to be there at this particular time.
Well, surely, Mick, right now, and of course you rode this series last year, although you crashed here in Glasgow, but it must be one of tension down there now. The riders are riding these last few laps on the nerves now, and one of the riders who has done all of the work here for 6 weeks, Phil Baton, despite just coming down rapidly here in Glasgow, is still on the front now. Neil Stevens corners first, the rider who went round one of the corners at Cardiff, slipping along on the wet cobbles, then got up and finished second behind Danny Clark. Now it's Stevens in the front, followed by Tony Doyle. What a climax this is. The average speed already 32 miles an hour tonight, and that is formidable.
32 mile an hour, and that finishing sprint will be probably up near close on 40 mile an hour, because we've got this big long 200-yard finishing straight. They'll have the biggest of the 14 gears that they've got in here. That is the very top gear, and they'll be giving it everything they've got right out of that last corner. But that isn't the only sprint, because what happens is, to battle for your position, you've got to be near the front. If you're any further back than 8th position on this circuit, coming into that last lap, then forget it. So what they'll do, they'll keep sprinting, keep the pace high, keep fighting and jostling for the positions, and they know they've got to do that with 3 to go. That's why Neil Stevens is there, gritting his teeth. He knows to maintain a good place tonight, he's got to keep up there at the front, at least 2 laps to go.
So this remarkable 20-year-old who's really been discovered here by racing in Britain all this year, and now he gives way, his legs will take no more. And the riders behind, anxious to get into first place. First into the corner, Tony Doyle. Then comes Ian Bambury. Elliott is there now in 3rd place. Just behind him is Phil Thomas and Steve Joughin as well, because if Joughin could win this tonight and Elliott and Thomas were a few places back, then it would be Steve Joughin, the British champion, who would walk away with the title here in Glasgow. This has been a tremendous series, and even in these closing laps, it is still unclear who will walk away with the final title. Doyle on the front. Baton moves up nicely. Everybody now is racing for the front, and an attack by Stephen Roche.
And little Steve Joughin is just the sort of rider, they call him the pocket rocket because he's so small but so explosive. He can hide there, he can sit on your wheel in actual fact. You can turn around and not even notice he's there, he's that short. And he's the sort of guy that can take advantage of a big rider like Malcolm Elliott, who likes a big long lead out. Steve can sit there, come off his wheel, 100 yards to go, and take the title like that.
Well, the length of the line of riders says it all now. They're being drawn out here by Steve Joughin and Steve Roche from Dublin. There's Roche. He's found his form now. He was second, of course, when he rode at Bristol. He's ridden so well here. Round that corner tight, and then comes out wide, looks over his shoulder, sees that Bambury is still behind him. Will follow the yellow jersey of Malcolm Elliott, because he won't be far away tonight. He's 1 place behind Thomas now. So Thomas has moved 1 place in front, and if they finish like that, then it's Phil Thomas who will snatch the title tonight, and Elliott knows it. So it's not so much the winner tonight, Nick, it's the rider who gets in front of Phil Thomas, or vice versa, with 1 lap to go.
Yes, indeed, and the rider that can fight and hold that position, such a rider like Danny Clark, the man with the white stripe up his crash helmet, he's been fighting there for the last 2 laps. He's ideal in this sort of situation because he's used to track racing. This is very similar to track racing tonight, maintaining very high speeds, very closely packed bunches.
Well, as the riders grapple for the wheels at the back, it's Roche at the front, Banbury in second place, Clark lurking there in third place, and he has an amazing turn of speed. Clark now on the left with the white stripe down his crash helmet. Banbury comes to the front, thinking of helping Steve Joughin to victory here. Steve Joughin takes Banbury's wheel, his teammate. If Banbury can give Joughin the lead out he wants, Joughin will come smoothly out of Banbury's slipstream and try for victory. Elliott in yellow moves up, fighting for his life now. He needs to beat Thomas to conserve that yellow jersey, the jersey he wore so proudly last week when we were at Birmingham. And now as we come towards the line, it's Banbury on the right, Joughin goes in the middle, and Danny Clark on the left. Clark with that stripe, and Elliott comes through in yellow. Bit of bumping a barge in, Joughin goes out of it, Clark comes clear. And Danny Clark gets out. Phil Thomas snaked up on that last sprint. Well, that was a tremendous finish by Phil Thomas. He came from nowhere on the right, and he knows it now. Well, this is going to go to the computer because Danny Clark has won. He gets the 10 points. But the interest now is on who was second and who was third. And I think it was Phil Thomas who snatched 9 points. Thomas clearly does 2. And Malcolm Elliott in third place, he gets 8 points. And that now gives both riders equal points overall. And I think that means the judges will say that Phil Thomas is going to be declared the winner of the Kellogg's Championship by virtue of that last sprint. And what a sprint it was. Danny Clark, don't forget, he won in the rain at Cardiff. He has now won here in the dusk of the city of Glasgow. But the rider who finished second, Phil Thomas, is the man who's going to take away the title. Here we can see it again. No doubt about the speed of Clark. 38 miles an hour takes it. Thomas is second. In third place is Elliott, and I think that has cost Elliott the championship tonight.
Phil Thomas, congratulations. You've retained your Kellogg's title, but were you really that sure when you crossed the line?
I wasn't so sure all the way through the race. You know, Malcolm followed me most of the way. I've done some attacking early on, trying to get in some breakaway groups, but all the time some of the rally team were close by to close the gaps up, and then Malcolm stayed close to me then for sort of the second half of the race, and then it was just down to the finish. But I was quite confident tonight I could take in the finish because I've been going pretty well in training the last couple of weeks. I rode the track yesterday, I won a few races, had quite good form, so I was pretty confident there that I could take him on the line. And it turned out I did, and I'm absolutely thrilled to bits.
But coming into that finishing straight, 200 metres from the line, you didn't seem to be in a great position.
I didn't seem to be really. I was, because although it's a very fast finish, it's a heavy finish because it's quite windy out there. And I was in the right position really. I was about fourth wheel up the corner. With about 50 yards to go, I was coming past Malcolm and Steve so fast, I even thought I was going to take Danny. But, you know, Danny just held me off on the line, and all the best to him.
Very important title for you, isn't it?
It really is, it really is. I really did want to win. I haven't had the best of form this year, not as good as I had last year, but I'm really thrilled to bits to retain the title, I really am.
Let's just bring in briefly Malcolm Elliott. Malcolm, great ride, commiserations, great series for you as well, but disappointment there at the close.
Well, yeah, very disappointing. We came out the last corner there, I perhaps overgeared a bit, but Phil was coming fast. I thought with 50 yards to go there, I thought I couldn't see him, and I was beginning to think victory was there, but he came a bit late, that's all.
Great tussle between the two of you throughout the series. We thoroughly enjoyed it. Congratulations on the way you both performed.
Thank you very much.
Well, a tremendous night for Phil Thomas. A disappointing one indeed for Malcolm Elliott. Thomas has finished in the first 3 now on 4 occasions during the 6 events. And a little bit disappointed there, Malcolm Elliott. Confirmation of the 6th event here in Glasgow. Danny Clark, the winner for the 2nd time in the series with 10 points. Phil Thomas, 9 points in 2nd place, and what a difference that made to the result. Malcolm Elliott in 3rd place takes 8, and Steve Joughin did well to take 4th place with 7. And there we have the final situation, equal on points, but the yellow jersey to Phil Thomas, between Phil Thomas with 33 points and Malcolm Elliott with the same. Steve Joughin of England comes up from 5th to finish in 3rd with 29 points. Jack Kershaw, perhaps for many the man of this series, so consistent with 27 points, and Alan Piper, not here tonight, in fact has missed 2 races, but still manages to finish in 5th place with 24 points. And there we have Jeremy Sondvinch from the promotions manager of Kellogg's presenting the Silver Salver to Phil Thomas. Danny Clark also there on the stand. And the overall situation in the King of the Sprints, Alan Piper, not here tonight, but he knows already he's won that title. Steve Fleetwood is in second place with 31 points. Stephen Roche of Ireland with 26, and Phil Baton, terrific ride by Baton, finishes fourth.
So the end of a series that's brought something like 150,000 people onto the streets of Manchester, Nottingham, Bristol, Cardiff, Birmingham and here at Glasgow. Through it all, Phil Thomas has shown the consistency, the determination, the sense of tactics that makes him the master of this kind of racing. So Thomas retains his title, although Clark wins the race. He retains his title in the closest possible fashion. As he starts to celebrate, we say goodbye from Glasgow, goodbye from the Kelloggs Championship.